NFL players with million-dollar contracts ending up in courtrooms, jail cells, and prison yards has happened more times than most fans realize. From active stars facing felony charges mid-season to Hall of Famers sentenced to decades behind bars, the line between the field and the cell block has been crossed again and again. Let's look at every case, starting with the ones making headlines right now. On December 2nd, 2025, something happened inside a home in Dedham, Massachusetts, a suburb of Boston that would put one of the NFL's most productive wide receivers in legal jeopardy during one of the best seasons of his career. New England Patriots wide receiver Stefon Diggs faces charges of felony strangulation, or suffocation and misdemeanor assault and battery in connection with a December 2nd incident, according to paperwork filed in Dedham District Court. The alleged victim is not a stranger. She is not someone from a nightclub. She is not a random person off the street. Stefon Diggs is accused of strangulating his personal chef, as his criminal case could alter the Patriots' season. He is facing a felony strangulation charge in Massachusetts after a recent disagreement with his personal chef about her compensation allegedly escalated into a physical confrontation. Here is what the police report says happened. Mila Adams told police that on December 2nd, she and Diggs had been trading texts about money she claims Diggs owes her, and that when he entered her unlocked bedroom at his home outside Boston, their argument turned violent, according to a Dedham Police Department report filed Monday. The argument was about a paycheck. Diggs and the accuser allegedly disagreed about whether she was owed a month's pay. That is what started this, a disagreement over wages. According to the accuser's version of events, it went from words to something far worse. She alleges that the male then smacked her across the face, and then, per the police report, the male then tried to choke her, using the crook of his elbow around her neck, and she feared she would black out. Diggs tightened his grip as she tried to pry his arm away, the woman told police, adding that he allegedly threw her onto the bed and said words to the effect of, "Thought so." The woman told Diggs she had not been paid. He responded by saying lies before leaving the room, according to the report. She said the altercation left her sore and with difficulty breathing for days, according to police documents. The woman did not go to the police right away. Adams told police she went to stay with a friend after the alleged incident and returned to Diggs' home December 9th to collect her belongings. When she texted Diggs about the money after that, he referred her to an assistant who told her Diggs wanted her to sign a non-disclosure agreement. According to the police report, Adams did not sign any such document, the police report says. She went to the police on December 16th. Due to his fame, she was very hesitant to come forward with this, police said in the report. Now, here is the other side. Diggs' attorney, David Meyer, said in a statement that the allegations are unsubstantiated. He stated, Stefon Diggs categorically denies these allegations. They are unsubstantiated, uncorroborated, and were never investigated because they did not occur. The defense position is clear. Meyer said the timing and motivation for making the allegations is crystal clear. They are the direct result of an employee-employer financial dispute that was not resolved to the employee's satisfaction. Stefon looks forward to establishing the truth in a court of law. The Patriots, for their part, stood behind their player. The New England Patriots are aware of the accusations that have been made regarding Stefon Diggs, the Patriots said in a statement. Stefon has informed the organization that he categorically denies the allegations. We support Stefon. We will continue to gather information and will cooperate fully with the appropriate authorities, and the NFL as necessary. And here is where the timeline gets really interesting. This is the part that had people talking. The charges came down at the end of December 2025. The 13-3 Patriots had already clinched a spot in the NFL playoffs by winning the AFC East. Diggs is an important piece for New England as it eyes its first postseason run since 2021. He emerged as quarterback Drake May's favorite target in what represents his first season back from an ACL tear. So the Patriots are rolling into the playoffs. Their best receiver is facing a felony charge, and the court, the actual court of law, made a decision. Stefon Diggs, the Patriots' star receiver charged with strangulation and assault, will not be arraigned until after the Super Bowl. Let that sit for a moment. A court in Massachusetts looked at a felony strangulation charge and decided the arraignment could wait. The football schedule took priority. Diggs will be arraigned on January 23rd, 2 days before the AFC Championship game. That was the original date. Then, the judge also agreed to consider a request to extend Diggs' arraignment date to March. The defense pushed for more time, and the court agreed. So Diggs played in the playoffs. He played in the AFC Championship. Diggs was Drake May's top target throughout the season, overcoming a 2024 ACL tear and giving the young quarterback a reliable veteran pass catcher to help the Patriots offense blossom en route to a Super Bowl 60 appearance. He went all the way to the Super Bowl with a felony charge hanging over his head, and the court let it happen. The legal system made room for football. Then, After the Super Bowl, it was time to face the music. During a brief appearance in front of a judge, Diggs pleaded not guilty to charges of felony strangulation and misdemeanor assault. He was ordered to not have contact with his accuser. That arraignment took place on February 13, 2026. He entered a plea of not guilty through his attorney and was released on his own recognizance. A judge ordered that Diggs have no contact with the alleged victim, directly or indirectly, as the case proceeds. The case now moves toward a pretrial hearing scheduled for April 2026. Prosecutors will determine whether to pursue the charges at trial or seek a resolution beforehand. Under Massachusetts law, strangulation is treated as a serious felony offense due to its potential lethality, even in the absence of visible injuries. In Massachusetts, a conviction on felony strangulation carries up to 5 years in prison, and potentially longer in special circumstances. Now, some context on what Diggs has to lose here beyond his freedom. Diggs, 32, joined the Patriots in March as a free agent. On a 3-year, $69 million contract, Diggs, who ranks 6th among active players with 11,504 receiving yards, also posted the highest catch rate of his career in 2025 and was the Patriots' first 1,000-yard receiver since Julian Edelman in 2019. Over the course of his 11-year NFL career, Diggs has had stints in Minnesota, Buffalo, and Houston. This man is not a nobody. He was a star in Minnesota. He made the Minneapolis Miracle happen. He was the go-to receiver in Buffalo for years. And now, in what was supposed to be the redemption chapter of his career in New England, he is staring at a felony charge. Diggs could still be suspended at some point, but the NFL will likely wait until his legal case is resolved before making a decision on a punishment. It's worth noting the NFL does not need a guilty plea or conviction to suspend a player. NFL policy calls for the league to conduct its own investigation, regardless of how the case is handled legally. For example, the NFL suspended Ezekiel Elliott 6 games after investigating domestic violence allegations that never resulted in criminal charges. So even if Diggs beats this in court, the NFL could still come down on him independently. When asked about it during a media session, Diggs acknowledged it's been a very emotional time, but said he can't say anything about the case. "I'm going to continue to be the guy I've been. Try to finish the season strong," Diggs said. This case is still unfolding right now. No trial date has been set. The pretrial hearing is in April 2026. But the optics alone, a court postponing an arraignment on a felony charge, so a player could compete in the Super Bowl, that part of the story has already been written. Now, if you think the Diggs situation is the only NFL-adjacent legal story happening right now, you would be wrong. The other one involves a name that is arguably even more famous. Pat Mahomes Sr. is the father of Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs quarterback who is widely considered the best player in the NFL right now. Pat Mahomes Sr. was also an athlete himself. Before his son became a world-famous athlete, the elder Mahomes was a standout athlete himself who played professional sports for over a decade. Mahomes Sr. was an all-state quarterback in the late 1980s at Lindale, as well as all-state in basketball and baseball. He turned down scholarship offers in basketball and football to several schools, including Arkansas, before going the Major League Baseball route. Mahomes Sr., 55, played 11 seasons in Major League Baseball, with teams including the Twins, Mets, and Rangers. But the headlines are not about baseball anymore. This week's arrest is exactly 2 years after the arrest that led to Mahomes Sr.'s latest conviction, which was the result of his 6th driving while intoxicated arrest in Smith County since 2012, according to online jail records. Let that number register. 6 DWI arrests in Smith County since 2012. 6. The most recent conviction, the one that matters for this story, came from an arrest on February 3, 2024. During the February 2024 stop, the officer saw an open 16-ounce beer can in the console of Mahomes Sr.'s car during the traffic stop, an arrest warrant affidavit states. That arrest happened days before the Super Bowl, the one where his son, Patrick Mahomes, led the Chiefs to victory over the San Francisco 49ers. So while the son is preparing for the biggest game of his life, the father is getting arrested for DWI. Prosecutors and courts framed this case as DWI third time or more, a designation that functions as a third-degree felony under Texas law, carrying up to 10 years in prison. In August 2024, the elder Mahomes was sentenced to 5 years probation after pleading guilty in August 2024 to a DWI charge. Pat Mahomes Sr. received a sentence of 10 days in county jail and 5 years of probation with intense supervision for the first year. That should have been it. Plead guilty, serve the probation, stay clean, move on. But it was not it. On January 1st, 2026, New Year's Day, something triggered an alert. Mahomes Sr. has been serving 5 years probation after pleading guilty in his 2024 DWI case but authorities claim he broke the terms of his probation by allegedly drinking alcohol, with the probation violation report stating he had a high reading on his Scram alcohol ankle monitor. On January 1st, his probation officer was notified. And then, on February 3rd, 2026, Patrick Mahomes Sr. is back in the Smith County Jail after violating a term of his probation for a driving while intoxicated sentence. According to the district attorney, he was locked up, no bond. According to court records, Mahomes Sr. was booked into Smith County Jail on Tuesday and is currently being held without bond. And the prosecutors were not playing around. Patrick Mahomes Sr. will likely be spending his Super Bowl Sunday behind bars. The ex-MLB player will remain in jail until a hearing next month, with prosecutors pushing for him to serve a 10-year prison sentence for violating the terms of his probation. 10 years. Prosecutors pushed for 10 years in prison for a probation violation on a DWI case. That is how serious repeat offenses are in Texas. Now, here's what happened next. The defense fought back, and they had evidence. Pat Mahomes Sr.'s attorney says, test results support. There was no alcohol in the former baseball star's system. During an alleged violation of his DWI-related probation, prior to the withdrawal, a probation violation report stated his probation officer was notified on January 5th that Mahomes Sr. had a high alcohol reading on his alcohol ankle monitor on New Year's Day. But when he submitted a urine analysis January 5th, the lab report came back negative for alcohol at the time. Another urine test taken January 9th came back negative for alcohol as well. So the ankle monitor said one thing, the actual lab test said another. The defense presented even more evidence. Mahomes Sr.'s attorney Joe Murphy said in an interview with CBS 19 that results were presented supporting Mahomes Sr. did not have alcohol in his system at the time of the alleged probation violation. Murphy said a hair follicle test returned with clean results. On March 9, 2026, the judge held the hearing. Prosecutors this week dropped their request to revoke Mahomes Sr.'s probation, and as a result, a Smith County judge added 2 years to his sentence. Appearing before Judge Kerry Russell in a courtroom in Tyler, Mahomes Sr. received an additional 2 years of probation and will now be on probation for a total of 7 years. His sentence began in September 2024 after being sentenced for driving while intoxicated. On February 3rd, 24, Russell also ordered Mahomes Sr. catch up on community service and enter an outpatient treatment program. As part of the ruling, Mahomes Sr. was sentenced to 30 days in jail, but he received credit for time already served, so he was released on Monday. He was a free man again, but the terms are strict. Mahomes Sr. will remain on probation through 2031 and must complete the additional requirements set by the judge. After his release, Mahomes Sr. spoke publicly. He told CBS 19 he felt the court made the right decision and said he has been sober for more than 2 years. I hate that it had to come to this. I got the Scram monitor on my ankle and it went off, but I guess it's a machine. Everything makes mistakes. I know I haven't had a drink in over 2 years. Now the clock runs through 2031 under the extended probation, and the consequences of any future slip are crystal clear. Any violation could trigger revocation proceedings and up to 10 years in prison. The Mahomes name made this a national story. The reason anyone outside Texas cared about this case had nothing to do with the law. Pat Mahomes Sr. drew national headlines because his son, Patrick Mahomes, is the Kansas City Chiefs quarterback. ESPN, NBC News, the Associated Press, and people all covered the plea and sentencing. A local DWI case became a national content event the moment editors attached the Mahomes name. But the reality is that this is a man with a long history of DWI arrests who came within inches of spending up to a decade in prison. The judge chose extended probation over revocation. The judge's decision to extend Mahomes Sr.'s probation rather than revoking it shows a focus on rehabilitation over punishment, which is an approach many criminal justice reform advocates have called for. Whether that is the right call or not depends on who you ask. But the fact remains, Pat Mahomes Sr., the father of the most famous quarterback in the NFL, spent Super Bowl Sunday in a jail cell. His son was out of the playoffs by then, but the timing was not lost on anyone. These are the cases happening right now. Active charges, ongoing legal proceedings, probation through 2031, and both of them connected to the biggest names in football. But if you think current NFL players in courtrooms is something new, it is not. And the cases that came before these are far worse. Part 2. Aaron Hernandez, the 40 million man who died in a cell. There is no NFL crime story that has been told more than the story of Aaron Hernandez. And there is a reason for that. It is not just that he was an NFL player who killed someone. It is that he was one of the best tight ends in football, playing for the most famous franchise in the sport with a $40 million contract, and he threw all of it away. And the details of how it happened are staggering. Aaron Joseph Hernandez, November 6, 1989, April 19, 2017, was an American professional football player who was a tight end in the National Football League. He played 3 seasons with the New England Patriots until his arrest and conviction for the murder of Odin Lloyd. Hernandez played college football for the Florida Gators, earning first-team All-American honors and winning the 2009 BCS National Championship game. Due to concerns towards his size and off-the-field incidents, he was not selected until the 4th round of the 2010 NFL Draft by the Patriots at 20 years old. Despite falling in the draft, Hernandez immediately showed why he was considered one of the best talents in college football. Alongside teammate Rob Gronkowski, Hernandez formed one of the league's most dominant tight end duos, becoming the first pair to score at least 5 touchdowns each in consecutive seasons for the same team. He also made an appearance in Super Bowl XLVI, and then the Patriots rewarded him. About 6 weeks after Furtado and Deabreu were killed, Hernandez signed a 5-year, $40 million contract with the Patriots and went on to play another season before Lloyd was killed. Read that line again. Men that Hernandez would later be charged with murdering, the Patriots gave him $40 million. Nobody knew yet. Nobody had any idea. The contract was signed in 2012. Aaron Hernandez was 22 years old, a multimillionaire, and one of the most dynamic offensive weapons in football. He had a fiancée, a daughter on the way, and a mansion in North Attleboro, Massachusetts. Less than a year later, all of it was gone. On June 17, 2013, Lloyd was shot and killed in an industrial park located 1 mile from Hernandez's house. Odin Lloyd was 27 years old. He was a landscaper. He played semi-professional football on weekends. At the time of his death, Odin Lloyd was dating Shania Jenkins, sister of the fiancée of Aaron Hernandez. That was the connection. Lloyd was dating the sister of Hernandez's fiancée. The night before the murder, on June 16th, the night before Lloyd's death, Hernandez texted 2 friends from his hometown of Bristol, Connecticut, asking them to come to Massachusetts, writing, "You can't trust anyone anymore." In the early morning hours of June 17th, the 3 of them, Hernandez, Ernest Wallace, and Carlos Ortiz, picked Lloyd up. Lloyd was riding as a passenger in Hernandez's car. He texted his sister, "Did you see who I am with?" And when his sister responded, he replied, "NFL." Lloyd's last text to his sister read, "Just so you know." His sister later said that she had thought he was bragging. He was not bragging. He was sending what amounted to his last words. They drove to an industrial park less than a mile from Hernandez's mansion. For reasons that were never made clear to the jury, Lloyd was shot 6 times in the middle of the night. A motive for the murder was never definitively established. Prosecutors suggested Lloyd may have known something about Hernandez's involvement. In the 2012 drive-by shooting, police investigated the possibility that Lloyd may have learned of Hernandez's bisexuality, and that Hernandez was worried that Lloyd might out him to others. But nothing was proven. Police almost immediately zeroed in on Hernandez because they found in Lloyd's pocket the key to a car the NFL player had rented. Security cameras at Hernandez's own home captured damning evidence. Security video from inside Hernandez's home showed him holding what appeared to be a gun, less than 10 minutes after Lloyd was killed. The surveillance system also captured Hernandez, Wallace, and Ortiz relaxing at his home, hours after Lloyd was shot, hanging out in the basement man cave. Within days, the police came to his door. On June 26, 2013, Hernandez was arrested at his home and charged with first-degree murder, 1 count of carrying a firearm without a license, 2 counts of possessing a large-capacity firearm, and 2 counts of possessing a firearm without a firearm identification card. Following his arrest, Hernandez was immediately released by the Patriots. He went from $40 million to unemployed in the time it took to read a statement. Hernandez's arrest and subsequent termination by the Patriots resulted in financial and other consequences. He automatically forfeited his 2015-2018 salaries, totaling $19.3 million, which were not guaranteed. The Patriots voided all remaining guarantees, including his 2013 and 2014 salaries. The trial lasted weeks. Prosecutors presented a wealth of evidence that Hernandez was with Lloyd at the time he was killed, including home security video from Hernandez's mansion, witness testimony, and cell phone records that tracked Lloyd's movements. The defense tried a different approach. Hernandez's lawyer, James Sultan, acknowledged for the first time during closing arguments that Hernandez was there when Lloyd was killed, but the attorney pinned the shooting on 2 of Hernandez's friends, Ernest Wallace and Carlos Ortiz, saying his client was a 23-year-old kid who witnessed a shocking crime and didn't know what to do. The jury did not buy it. The jury deliberated for 36 hours over 7 days before rendering its verdict. On April 15, 2015, Hernandez was convicted of first-degree murder and all weapons charges, and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Life without parole. Because of the first-degree murder conviction, Hernandez was automatically sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Jurors decided on the guilty verdict after they deliberated for nearly 36 hours. When the verdict was read, the courtroom erupted. Hernandez's mother, Terry, and his fiancée, Shayana Jenkins, cried and gasped. When they heard the verdict, and Lloyd's mother also cried, Jenkins wept loudly on his mother's shoulder. Hernandez, his eyes red, mouthed to them, "Be strong, be strong." At his sentencing in the Bristol Superior Court to mandatory life without possibility of parole, Hernandez was expressionless. After the guilty verdict was announced by the jury foreperson, he sat down with his head shaking. The mother of Odin Lloyd addressed the court. "Odin was the first best gift I ever received." Lloyd's mother, Ursula Ward, told the court, "I thank God every second and every day of my son's life that I spent with him." She said she forgave those responsible. "I forgive the hands of the people that had a hand in my son's murder, either before or after." The district attorney summed it up. District Attorney Thomas Quinn said, "Aaron Hernandez may have been a well-known New England Patriots football player. However, in the end, the jury found that he was just a man who committed a brutal murder." One juror told reporters, "We did the right thing." They wouldn't discuss the nature of their deliberations, but noted there were many tears in the jury room. In their verdict form, they found that Hernandez used extreme atrocity or cruelty in killing Lloyd. One juror cited the fact that Lloyd was shot 6 times in helping him make that determination. Immediately following the conviction, Hernandez was temporarily transferred to the Massachusetts Correctional Institution, Cedar Junction, a maximum security intake facility, to begin serving his sentence. It is located 1.5 miles from Gillette Stadium, where he formerly played. Think about that geography for a moment. The prison where Aaron Hernandez began serving his life sentence was 1.5 miles from the stadium where he once caught touchdowns in front of 65,000 fans. He was transferred to serve the remainder of his life sentence at the Sousa Baranowski Correctional Center, a maximum security facility. But the legal saga was not over, because there was another case. While on trial for Lloyd's murder, Hernandez was also indicted for the 2012 double homicide of Daniel Diabro and Safiro Furtado. This was the drive-by shooting from 2012. Bradley claimed Hernandez became enraged after Diabro bumped into him while dancing, spilling his drink. He said Hernandez later opened fire on the men's car as they waited at a stoplight. A spilled drink. Hernandez allegedly killed 2 men because someone bumped into him at a nightclub and spilled his drink. Bradley also said Hernandez shot him in the face months later, after he made a remark about the earlier shootings. Bradley lost his right eye in the shooting. In 2017, the double murder trial took place. He was acquitted after a 2017 trial. The jury found him not guilty of the murders of Diabro and Furtado. It convicted him of a single charge, unlawful possession of a gun. The judge sentenced him to an additional 4 to 5 years in prison, separate from his existing life sentence for that conviction. The wire service notes Hernandez wept quietly at the jury announcement, while relatives of the 2 victims, Daniel Diabro and Safiro Furtado, sobbed before they were helped from the courtroom. 5 days after being acquitted of the double murder, it all ended. 5 days later, on April 19, 2017, at 3:05 a.m., Hernandez was found dead in his prison cell by correctional officers after apparently hanging himself with a bedsheet. Aaron Hernandez was 27 years old. He had just been acquitted of double murder. He still had the life sentence for the Odin Lloyd case, and he chose to end his own life. In the aftermath, there was one more legal twist. On May 9, 2017, Massachusetts Superior Court vacated Hernandez's murder conviction due to the legal principle of abatement ab initio. Under Massachusetts law at the time, if a convicted person died while their case was under appeal, the conviction was automatically erased. Since Hernandez died while his conviction was being appealed, the court initially vacated it, but that did not sit well with a lot of people. The attorney representing the Lloyd family argued that Hernandez was rightfully convicted of Lloyd's murder and that the conviction was unfairly canceled. Quinn also argued that Hernandez killed himself knowing of the technicality that would get his conviction undone, and that he should not be able to accomplish in death what he never would have been able to do in life. On March 13, 2019, the Supreme Judicial Court reinstated Hernandez's conviction and stated that the trial record would note that his conviction was neither affirmed nor reversed. The court, in their ruling, also officially ended the practice of abatement ab initio, ruling that it was outdated and never made sense. After his death, there was one more revelation. Hernandez was posthumously diagnosed with chronic traumatic encephalopathy, CTE, which has led to speculation over how the condition may have affected his behavior. His brain showed severe CTE, the kind typically found in players who had been in the league for decades, not just 3 seasons. Researchers said it was one of the worst cases of CTE they had ever seen in someone his age. Does that excuse what he did? No. Odin Lloyd is still dead. Daniel Diabro and Safiro Furtado are still dead. A witness lost an eye. Families were destroyed. But the CTE diagnosis added another layer to an already layered case. Hernandez's arrest, conviction, and death attracted a great deal of media attention, especially because of increasing concerns about CTE in athletes. His life was the focus of a 2018 Boston Globe Spotlight team investigation and a podcast called Gladiator, a Netflix documentary entitled Killer Inside: The Mind of Aaron Hernandez, was released on January 15, 2020. Aaron Hernandez had a $40 million contract, a fiancée, a daughter, and a future in the NFL. He threw all of it away. He died in a maximum security prison cell at 27 years old, serving a life sentence without parole, 1.5 miles from the stadium where he used to play. That is not a cautionary tale. That is a tragedy on every side. Part 3, Michael Vick, the comeback that should not have been possible. If Aaron Hernandez is the story of an NFL player who went to prison and never came back, Michael Vick is the opposite. He went to prison and came back in a way that nobody thought was possible. But the crimes that put him there are the kind that still make people angry almost 20 years later. The Bad News Kennels dogfighting investigation began in April 2007 with a search of property in Surry County, Virginia, owned by Michael Vick, who was at the time quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons football team, and the subsequent discovery of evidence of a dogfighting ring. Over 70 dogs, mostly pit bull terriers, with some said to be showing signs of injuries, were seized along with physical evidence. Michael Vick was not just any quarterback. He was the #1 overall pick in the 2001 NFL Draft. He was the most electrifying player in football. In 2005, the Atlanta Falcons gave Vick what we know now to be a preposterous contract of 10 years for $130 million with $37 million guaranteed. He was the face of the franchise. He was the face of a new kind of quarterback, one who could run and throw in ways the league had never seen. Every young dual-threat quarterback was compared to Michael Vick. He was the prototype. And then law enforcement showed up at his property in rural Virginia. In July 2007, Vick and 3 other men were indicted on federal offense and state felony charges relating to a 6-year-long continuing criminal enterprise of an interstate dog-fighting ring known as Bad News Kennels, based upon a local nickname for Newport News, Vick's hometown. 6 years. The operation had been running for 6 years. From the time Vick entered the NFL, he had been financing and participating in dogfighting. Allegations included Vick's direct involvement in dogfighting, high-stakes gambling, and brutal executions of dogs. The details that emerged during the investigation were horrifying. Public outcry resulted from widespread news media publicity of the details, which included hanging, drowning, electrocuting, slamming, and shooting dogs. Dogs that did not perform well in fights were killed. Not euthanized, killed, by hanging, drowning, electrocution, or being slammed to the ground. These are the details that came out in court documents. Michael Vick, a prominent NFL quarterback known for his success with the Atlanta Falcons, pleaded guilty on August 20th, 2007 to financing a dogfighting ring. By August 20th, all the defendants on the initial federal charges, including Vick, had agreed to guilty pleas under plea bargain agreements, apparently avoiding facing the possibility of additional and more serious charges under the powerful Racketeer-Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. He pled guilty. There was no trial. And then the sentencing came. Michael Vick was sentenced to 23 months in prison Monday for running a cruel and inhumane dog-fighting ring and lying about it. Vick received a harsher sentence than Peace and Phillips, after Hudson concluded that the suspended Atlanta Falcons quarterback lied about his direct involvement in killing dogs and about his marijuana use, which was detected in a drug test, as well as his greater role in the criminal enterprise and lesser cooperation during the earlier investigation. The judge gave Vick a harsher sentence than his co-defendants because Vick lied. He tried to downplay his involvement, and the judge saw through it. When you lie to a federal judge, the sentence goes up, not down. Vick and 3 other principals were convicted of federal offense conspiracy charges and imprisoned. Vick was suspended by the NFL, was ordered to pay the Atlanta Falcons back a portion of his earnings, and lost endorsement deals worth millions more. The scandal sparked widespread public outcry against dogfighting and led to the cancellation of many of Vick's endorsement deals and the loss of his NFL career. He went to federal prison, not county jail, not a halfway house, federal prison. He served 21 months, nearly 2 full years behind bars. His career broke off in 2007 after he pleaded guilty for his involvement in a dog-fighting ring and spent 21 months in federal prison. When he went in, he was 27 years old. When he came out, he was 29. For a quarterback who relied on his legs as much as his arm, 2 years away from the game could have been a death sentence for his career. And that is what most people assumed would happen. Michael Vick was done. He would never play again. The public would never accept him back. Animal rights organizations would never let it go. His career was over. Except it was not. Vick turned everything around and became a spokesperson for the humane treatment of animals, and still managed to get himself another $100 million contract with the Philadelphia Eagles. He came back. He signed with the Philadelphia Eagles in 2009. He started as a backup behind Donovan McNabb and then Kevin Kolb. And then in 2010, when Kolb went down with an injury, Vick stepped in and played some of the best football of his life. In 2010, Vick threw for 3,018 yards and 21 touchdowns with only 6 interceptions. He ran for another 676 yards. He was named the NFL Comeback Player of the Year. He was a Pro Bowl selection. He looked like the best version of himself. And the Eagles rewarded him with a massive contract extension, from prison to $100 million. That does not happen, except it did. But let's be clear about something. Michael Vick wasn't so lucky in the court of public opinion. Vick became the most hated athlete in America after serving a 23-month prison sentence for his part in a dogfighting ring. There was a divide between those who thought he was too severely punished and those who believed he didn't get punished enough. That divide still exists today. There are people who believe Vick served his time, paid his debt to society, and earned his second chance. And there are people who believe that what he did to those animals is unforgivable, and that no amount of community service or spokesperson work can undo it. His actions also prompted legislative changes, including the passing of the Animal Fighting Prohibition Enforcement Act, which made dogfighting a felony offense. Vick's case literally changed the law. The Animal Fighting Prohibition Enforcement Act was a direct result of the public attention his case brought to the issue of dogfighting. Before Vick, many states treated dogfighting as a misdemeanor. After Vick, it became a federal felony. He went on to play several more seasons in the NFL with the Eagles, the Jets, and the Steelers before retiring. His total career spanned from 2001 to 2015, with the 2-year gap for prison. In total, he played 13 seasons in the NFL. Michael Vick's story is the NFL's most prominent example of a player who went to prison and came back. Whether you see that as redemption or as a system that lets famous people off the hook depends entirely on your perspective, but the facts are the facts. He served 21 months in federal prison for running a dogfighting ring that operated for 6 years, and he returned to sign a $100 million contract. Part 4, O.J. Simpson, The Trial of the Century and What Came After. If you are under 30, you might know O.J. Simpson primarily as a meme, or as a character in a TV show, or as a name that comes up whenever someone talks about famous trials. But for an entire generation of Americans, the O.J. Simpson case was the most important cultural event of the 1990s. It divided the country along racial lines. It changed how Americans thought about celebrity, justice, and the legal system. And it started with a football player, Orenthal James Simpson. O.J. was a football legend before he was anything else. He won the Heisman Trophy at USC in 1968. He was the first overall pick in the 1969 NFL Draft by the Buffalo Bills. In 1973, he became the first player in NFL history to rush for more than 2,000 yards in a single season. He was a 6-time Pro Bowl selection. He was inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 1985. After football, he became an actor, a broadcaster, and a commercial pitchman. He was famous, he was liked, he was everywhere. On June 12, 1994, Nicole Brown Simpson, O.J.'s ex-wife, and Ronald Goldman were found stabbed to death outside Nicole's home in Brentwood, Los Angeles. O.J. Simpson became the primary suspect. What followed is one of the most well-documented events in American legal history. The low-speed Bronco chase on June 17, 1994, was watched by an estimated 95 million people on live television. Simpson sat in the back of a white Ford Bronco driven by his friend Al Cowlings, holding a gun while police followed at a distance on the Los Angeles freeways. He was arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder. The trial began on January 24, 1995, and lasted for nearly 9 months. The prosecution, led by Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden, presented DNA evidence, blood evidence, and a timeline that placed Simpson at the scene. The defense, led by Robert Shapiro, Johnny Cochran, Robert Kardashian, F. Lee Bailey, and Barry Scheck, a group that became known as the Dream Team, argued that the evidence had been planted and mishandled by the LAPD, and that the case was racially motivated. On October 3, 1995, the verdict was announced. Not guilty on both counts. An estimated 150 million Americans watched the verdict live. In homes, offices, classrooms, and bars across the country, people reacted with shock, joy, anger, or disbelief. The racial divide in reactions was stark. Polling showed that a significant majority of Black Americans agreed with the verdict, while a significant majority of white Americans disagreed with it. Simpson walked free, but his legal troubles were not over. In 1997, a civil jury found Simpson liable for the wrongful deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman and ordered him to pay $33.5 million in damages to the families. Unlike the criminal trial, the civil trial only required a preponderance of evidence, not proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and the jury found that preponderance. Simpson largely avoided paying the judgment for years, eventually moving to Florida, which had strong asset protection laws that shielded his NFL pension and his home from seizure. And then came 2007. On September 13, 2007, Simpson and several other men entered a room at the Palace Station Hotel in Las Vegas. Two of the men were armed. Simpson claimed he was trying to recover personal memorabilia, items he said had been stolen from him. The dealers in the room said it was a robbery. In 2008, he was sentenced to 9 to 33 years in a Nevada state prison for armed robbery and kidnapping, after attempting to steal his own memorabilia back from two dealers in a Las Vegas hotel. He was convicted on 12 counts, including armed robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, kidnapping, and conspiracy. The sentencing, 9 to 33 years, was widely seen as the legal system catching up with him for the murders it had failed to convict him of in 1995. The man went from Heisman Trophy winner and NFL record setter to accused murderer and convicted robber and kidnapper. Simpson served 9 years of his sentence at the Lovelock Correctional Center in Nevada. He was granted parole in 2017 and released on October 1, 2017. After his release, Simpson lived in Las Vegas. He was active on social media, particularly Twitter, where he posted golf videos, gave opinions on sports, and generally acted like a man who was enjoying his freedom. He never expressed remorse for the murders he was acquitted of. O.J. Simpson died on April 10, 2024, at the age of 76 from prostate cancer. His story is unique in the annals of NFL crime, not because of what he did, but because of what he got away with. At least initially, the criminal trial of the century ended in acquittal. The civil trial found him liable. The robbery conviction put him in prison anyway, and through all of it, the football accomplishments that made him famous faded further and further into the background. When people say O.J. Simpson's name now, they do not think of 2003 rushing yards. They think of a white Bronco, a bloody glove, and a verdict that split a nation. He is, by any measure, the most famous NFL player to ever face a murder charge. He is also the only one who was acquitted of murder and then went to prison for something else entirely. The O.J. Simpson case changed everything. It changed how trials are televised. It changed how DNA evidence is presented. It changed how Americans talk about race and justice. And it all started because a football player was too famous to be ignored. Part 5. The Darker Cases. Ray Carruth, Plaxico Burress, and Ray Lewis. Some NFL crime stories dominate the news cycle for months or years. The O.J. trial lasted 9 months. The Hernandez case generated multiple documentaries. Vick's case changed federal law. But there are other cases that are just as dark, or in some ways darker, that have faded from the public consciousness. They should not have. Ray Carruth is a name that a lot of younger football fans have never heard, but what he did is one of the most disturbing crimes in NFL history. Ray Theodis Carruth, born Ray Lamar Wiggins, January 20th, 1974, is an American former professional football player who was convicted of conspiracy to murder. He played as a wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers of the National Football League. Carruth played college football for the Colorado Buffaloes, earning first-team All-American honors in 1996. He was selected by the Panthers in the first round of the 1997 NFL Draft and spent 3 seasons with the team. Carruth was the first active NFL player ever charged with first-degree murder. Before Aaron Hernandez, before anyone else, it was Ray Carruth. And the reason he had his girlfriend killed is almost unbelievable. Carruth was found guilty in 2001 for conspiracy to murder his pregnant girlfriend, Cherika Adams, in 1999, to avoid paying child support. That was the motive. He had his girlfriend, the mother of his unborn child, shot to death because he did not want to pay child support. And this was not the first time he had been in a child support dispute. During Carruth's sophomore year at Colorado, his girlfriend, Michelle Wright, gave birth to their son, Ray Jr. Wright sued him for child support, and Wright later testified that Carruth agreed to pay $2,700 per month in child support, half of what he was ordered to pay by a judge. He had already been through the child support process once. He decided to have her killed. On November 16, 1999, near Carruth's home in Charlotte, North Carolina, Cherika Adams, a real estate agent he had been dating, was shot 4 times using a .357 caliber Charter Arms revolver by Van Brett Watkins Sr., a nightclub manager and an associate of Carruth. Adams managed to call 911 and said that Carruth had stopped his vehicle in front of hers and that another vehicle drove alongside and its passenger had shot her. Carruth then drove away from the scene. Adams was 8 months pregnant with Carruth's child at the time. She was 8 months pregnant, so that the shooter, Van Brett Watkins, could pull up alongside and fire into her car. After being shot, Adams managed to call 911. She told them what happened. That 911 call was critical evidence. Soon after her admission to the hospital, she fell into a coma. Doctors delivered the baby via emergency cesarean section. Adams died on December 14, 1999. The baby, named Chancellor Lee Adams, survived, but suffered permanent brain damage and cerebral palsy as a result of being without oxygen for 70 minutes before he was born. The baby survived, but because he was without oxygen for 70 minutes, Chancellor Lee Adams has lived with cerebral palsy his entire life. When Adams died, Carruth was supposed to turn himself in. That was a condition of his bail. Instead, he ran. Carruth quickly fled after Adams's death, but was captured on December 15th in West Tennessee, found hiding in the trunk of a car outside a motel in Parker's Crossroads. The trunk also contained $3,900 cash, bottles of his urine, extra clothes, candy bars, and a cell phone. A first-round NFL draft pick, an All-American, hiding in a car trunk in Tennessee with candy bars and bottles of urine. The Panthers waived him on December 16th, citing a morals clause in his contract, and the NFL suspended him indefinitely on December 17th. The trial took place in 2001. Carruth was found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, shooting into an occupied vehicle, and using an instrument to destroy an unborn child. He was found not guilty of first-degree murder, sparing him from possible execution. Carruth was sentenced to 18 years and 11 months to 24 years and 4 months in prison. He avoided the first-degree murder conviction, which means he avoided the death penalty. But he was convicted on every other count. Watkins, who testified that Carruth paid him $6,000 for the murder, will be in prison until at least 2046. $6,000. That is what Carruth paid to have the mother of his child killed. $6,000. To put that in perspective, Carruth was making about $40,000 per game as an NFL player. He paid $6,000, less than the cost of 1/6 of a game check, to have a woman murdered. Van Brett Watkins is serving 40 to 50 years in prison. Watkins fired the shots that killed Adams. In a 2001 jailhouse interview, Watkins said, "I have to admit that I knew she was going to die with what caliber gun it was. The first 10 years were difficult." He spent 7 years in solitary confinement, 23 hours a day alone in his cell. Most of the infractions were for fighting, but in a 2009 jailhouse interview, Watkins said he is not the man he used to be. Carruth served 18 years, including pretrial confinement. He served 18 years of an 18 to 24-year sentence. On October 27, when he walked out, the 44-year-old Carruth did not speak to reporters as he left prison wearing a knit cap and an unzipped jacket. On a chilly morning with temperatures in the high 30s, there was a smattering of applause when he got into a white SUV and was whisked away. Before his release, Carruth had said publicly that he wanted custody of Chancellor. After initially saying he would like to have custody of Chancellor, Carruth changed his mind and said he would not attempt to pursue a relationship with his son after being released from prison, and try to be the father that I should have been from day one. Chancellor's grandmother, Sandra Adams, who has raised him his entire life, had a clear response. Chancellor will be raised either by me, or, after I'm gone, by someone else who loves him. Chancellor Lee graduated from Vance High School in 2021 at age 21. Despite everything, the brain damage, the cerebral palsy, officials confirmed Ray Carruth has moved to Pennsylvania days after his release from prison. The Ray Carruth case is not told as often as the Hernandez case or the OJ case, but in many ways, it is the darkest of them all. A man arranged to have the mother of his unborn child shot to death while she was 8 months pregnant to avoid child support payments. The child survived with permanent brain damage. The man served 18 years and is now free. The shooter is still in prison and will be until at least 2046. Now, not every NFL player who has gotten in trouble with the law has faced murder charges. Some of the cases are less about violence and more about poor decision-making, on a scale that defies comprehension. The Plaxico Burress case is the best example of that. Plaxico Burress was a Super Bowl hero. On February 3rd, 2008, he caught the game-winning touchdown pass from Eli Manning in Super Bowl XLI, helping the New York Giants pull off one of the greatest upsets in NFL history, defeating the undefeated New England Patriots 17-14. Less than a year later, on November 28, 2008, Burress went to a nightclub in Manhattan called the Latin Quarter. He was carrying a Glock semi-automatic handgun in the waistband of his sweatpants. He did not have a license to carry a concealed weapon in New York. During the night, the gun slipped down his leg. As he reached for it, he accidentally shot himself in the right thigh. He shot himself in a nightclub with an illegal gun. In New York City, which has some of the strictest gun laws in the country, Plaxico Burress served a 20-month prison term for accidentally shooting himself. He was charged with criminal possession of a weapon in the second degree. New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg publicly pushed for the maximum penalty. Burress eventually pled guilty and was sentenced to 2 years in prison. He served 20 months at the Oneida Correctional Facility. The irony of Burress's case is that the only person he shot was himself. He did not hurt anyone else. He did not threaten anyone. He did not brandish the weapon at another person. He accidentally shot himself in the leg, and he went to prison for 2 years. The case raised questions about the proportionality of New York's mandatory minimum sentencing for gun offenses. But the law is the law. Burress carried an illegal weapon into a public place in New York City, and he paid for it. After serving his time, Burress returned to the NFL. He played 1 season with the Jets in 2011, catching 45 passes for 612 yards and 8 touchdowns. He then played briefly with the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2012 before retiring. His career never reached the heights of his Super Bowl moment again. The last case to cover in this story is perhaps the most controversial because it involves a man who went on to become one of the greatest defensive players in NFL history, a Hall of Famer, and one of the most respected figures in football, despite the fact that he was once charged with murder. Ray Lewis, Baltimore Ravens, middle linebacker, 2-time Super Bowl champion, 13-time Pro Bowl selection, 2-time NFL Defensive Player of the Year, inducted into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in 2018. On January 31st, 2000, after Super Bowl XII in Atlanta, Ray Lewis and a group of friends got into an altercation outside a nightclub. 2 men, Jacinth Baker and Richard Lawler, were stabbed to death. Lewis was initially charged with murder and aggravated assault. He was arrested. He spent 15 days in jail. He was indicted by a grand jury, but the case fell apart. Witnesses were unreliable, evidence was contradictory, and Lewis hired an aggressive defense team. In June 2000, Lewis struck a deal with prosecutors. The murder charges were dropped. In exchange, Lewis pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice, a misdemeanor, for giving misleading statements to police in the hours after the killings. He was sentenced to 12 months of probation. The white suit Lewis was wearing the night of the incident was never found. The defense argued that his limo companions, Reginald Oakley and Joseph Sweeting, had been responsible for the stabbings, and that Lewis had merely been present. Oakley and Sweeting were later acquitted of all charges. Nobody was ever convicted for the murders of Jacinth Baker and Richard Lawler. Lewis returned to the NFL for the 2000 season and was named the NFL Defensive Player of the Year. He led the Ravens to a Super Bowl victory in Super Bowl XXXV in January 2001. He was named the Super Bowl MVP. From murder charge to Super Bowl MVP in less than a year, no player in NFL history has had a more dramatic turnaround in that short a time. Lewis always maintained his innocence in the murders. He expressed remorse for being in the situation, but never admitted to killing anyone. The obstruction of justice plea meant that he acknowledged misleading police, specifically telling them he did not see what happened when he had, but nothing more. The families of the victims were never satisfied with the outcome. They filed a civil wrongful death lawsuit against Lewis, which was settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. Lewis went on to play 17 seasons in the NFL, all with the Ravens. He retired after the 2012 season, having won his second Super Bowl ring in Super Bowl XL7. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame on the first ballot in 2018. His legacy is complicated. On the field, he is considered one of the greatest linebackers to ever play the game. Off the field, the Atlanta incident is a permanent asterisk. Depending on who you ask, Ray Lewis is either a man who was wrongly accused and got his name cleared, or a man who got away with murder because he was famous enough to hire the right lawyers. The list of NFL players who have faced the criminal justice system is long, longer than most fans realize. Stefon Diggs is currently facing a felony strangulation charge and has pleaded not guilty with a pretrial hearing in April 2026. Pat Mahomes Sr. is on probation through 2031 after multiple DWI arrests. Aaron Hernandez was convicted of first-degree murder and died in his prison cell at 27. Michael Vick served 21 months in federal prison for dogfighting and came back to sign a $100 million contract. O.J. Simpson was acquitted of double murder and then spent 9 years in prison for armed robbery. Ray Caruth hired hitmen to kill his pregnant girlfriend to avoid child support and served 18 years. Plaxico Burress shot himself in a nightclub and went to prison for 2 years. Ray Lewis was charged with murder after a Super Bowl party and pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice. Every one of these cases is different. The crimes are different. The sentences are different. The outcomes are different. Some of these men came back. Some of them did not. Some of them are still in the middle of their legal battles right now, But they all share one thing in common. They were NFL players, or connected to the NFL, and they found themselves on the wrong side of the law. The money, the fame, the contracts, none of it made them immune. The courtroom does not care about your stat line. The judge does not care about your touchdown catches. The jury does not care about your jersey number. And for some of these men, the moment the verdict was read, the moment the judge handed down the sentence, was the moment they realized that everything they had built, everything they had earned, everything they had worked for on the football field meant nothing inside those four walls. The field and the cell block are closer than anyone wants to admit, and the line between them is thinner than most people think. That is what happens when NFL players face life sentences.